Welcome back to JordsWoodShop. In this video, we're going to start the construction process of our dining room table set. What you can see next to me here is the almost completed top. Now it measures about 1 meter wide, just a little bit over, by about 2.1 meters long. Now keep in mind, this project here is a commissioned project, which means that I'm not going to be able to go into as much detail in this project as you're used to seeing on this channel. Now getting to this stage here where the tabletop is nice and flat, fully laminated and ready to move on to the next step took a while, but the biggest sort of chunk of that work was the milling process by far. Now, because I like to keep my videos to about 10 minutes long as a maximum duration, I've decided I'm going to do an entirely separate video on the milling process, which will go into detail of getting nice flat and square joints and things like that. So keep an eye out for that. Now, for the meantime, sit back, relax, and enjoy this funky milling montage. Let's get into this glue up. Now, as you saw towards the end of that montage, I actually added dominoes along the length of every lamination here, and that was just to sort of keep me aligned when I start applying the glue. If you don't have dominoes and you want to do a similar thing, biscuits work as well, dowels work, and you can even do splines or something like that if you really wanted to. So it's just an alignment thing, not really a strength thing. Now with this glue up, because it's quite a large piece, there is a few challenges that face us. Now, the first big challenge is the size. I mean, this tabletop is really big, so we need to sort of figure out if we're going to try and do it all in one go or split it up into smaller pieces so it becomes more manageable for us while we work it. The second challenge is time. With most glues, you will have about 5 to 10 minutes of open time before you should really have the thing in clamps. And while this benchtop is only made up of about 6 different laminations, getting glue on all the edges and then having it in clamps within 10 minutes, that's still going to be quite a challenge. So I think with these two things combined, it makes sense to split our glue up into 2 halves. Now, as the workshop is so hot at this time of year, regular yellow glue or your type 1 glue would begin to cure within about 2 minutes, making it a really bad choice for this application. So what I decided to use is my West Systems epoxy. Now this is a 2-part glue, it's really strong, and it also has an open time about 15 to 20 minutes, and generally it doesn't get affected too much by the heat. So with the glue mixed and the dominoes pre-glued, I spread a generous amount of epoxy on all the edges of my boards, making sure I get plenty of glue on all the actual domino tenons which are sticking out. With that done, I flip the boards down so they're laying flat and I begin to slot them all together. Now the dominoes can sometimes make it a little bit difficult getting the alignment just right, but in this case they all seem to just fit and everything worked for me quite well. Once everything is slotted together, I clamp the lamination together, making sure I alternate the clamps so it goes one on the top, one on the bottom, one on the top, one on the bottom, etc, etc. And by doing this, it just helps to keep all the clamping pressure nice and parallel to the board, and hopefully that will keep our lamination nice and flat at the end of the day. Now that I have the top out of the clamps, we can actually start getting rid of some of this excess glue here, and also if you have any ridge lines, get rid of them. Now luckily I used the domino, so the ridge lines are kept to a minimum, but we still need to get rid of them, otherwise the tabletop is going to look pretty damn silly when we put some finish on it. So I'm going to be using a tool that you haven't seen me use before on the show, and that's a belt sander. Now I tend to stay away from these because they are they're pretty aggressive and they're pretty easy to screw up. So if you're stationary at any one spot for too long, you'll find that you now have a lovely low spot in the center of your tabletop or whatever you're working on. So I try and stay away from these, but for a big tabletop like these, there's simply no better handheld tool anyway for the task. The secret to using a belt sander is to never focus on one spot or to ever stop moving. So if I was sanding right here and I kept it there for, 1 second even, that's when I'll find that I have a nice low spot in the middle of my table. So the idea is to never stop moving, never stop on top of a glue ridge, just keep coming back to it if you need to, and pretty much just don't try and do it too quickly. So let's get into that. So here I'm just feeling for any high spots and marking it with a pencil so I know where I have to do a little bit more sanding. So here I'm just getting ready to trim this tabletop down to its final size, which is 2.1 meters. So here I've marked a line which is nice and square, and I know that because I used my framing square to do that. And that gives me my overall length. And I'm just going to use my track saw to actually cut this down. Now if you don't have a track saw, just a standard circular saw and something like this, which is a sort of clamp on straight edge or just a straight piece of wood and a few clamps, would do the same job. Okay, so the last thing I want to do to this top before we move on to the base is actually just fill in all of these little knots and splits that we have coming through. Now this is what happens with carry. It's very common, but we do want to make sure it's nice and stable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some epoxy, and I'm just going to fill all of these little knots. Now this is the underside of the bench, and really the top side is unaffected really. There's 1 or 2 small knots which have already been filled. So these are never going to be seen, but we do want to make sure that it is nice and stable for the life of this table, which hopefully will be a lot longer than you and me. Okay, so hopefully you can see here, but I've got a bit of a check that runs through this board, and I would like to make sure that that doesn't get any worse. Now, with all these boards on the side, it's pretty safe, but still what I want to do is I want to fill that with resin, and because it comes through the top of the board here, then down about 3/4 of the way of the thickness, what I'm going to do is pour plenty of epoxy on the top and then come in with my shop vacuum and actually suck the resin through this hole here and into this cavity, and that should make sure that I get a nice solid sort of amount of glue in there, and then I'll come in with some tape and just tape that up to make sure it doesn't seep out any further. So that sucked plenty of glue through that line, and as you can see, it's actually seeping out of these little cracks down here now. So with some blue tape, I'll just tape that up to make sure it doesn't seep out any further. And that should be nice and stable, especially considering that this is sandwiched between so many wide boards, which are perfectly fine and check free. So we're going to leave it there in this video. So As you can see, the tabletop's coming along quite nicely, and in the next video we'll get a start on the base, so that will be quite fun as well. Now, like always, thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, let me know by leaving a comment below, clicking that like button, and also, if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel. So by subscribing, it sort of ensures you don't miss out on any future videos, but it also brings my channel up in the rankings in YouTube, which means that more people will be able to see these videos. So it's always appreciated when I get a new subscriber. So anyway, thanks for watching. Check out my Facebook page if you want to see some photos and things from behind the scenes and know what's going on, because that's sort of the best way to stay up to date with JordsWoodShop and all those sorts of things. So head over to facebook.com/JordsWoodShop, and I will see you in the next video.